Hi everyone, it's Jerry. This is a round 8 game from the 2017 Isle of Man Masters tournament between Fabiano Caruana, playing on the white end, and the current champ Magnus Carlsen. This was played today, September 30th, and who knows, this game may very well turn out to be a preview game for the next World Chess Championship match. Caruana certainly came very close to becoming challenger for the last championship. So let's dive in here. Caruana opening up with e4. We have a Ruy Lopez on board, and neither player blinks for about the first 15 moves. Neither player caught off guard, well within preparation. Carlsen electing a more aggressive deployment with the bishop. Plenty of games with bishop to e7, not here. c3, d6. Black doesn't want to budge with the b-pawn and give up control of c4 so easily, so rook to b8, d4, and bishop to b6. This tension, by the way, keep a very close eye on it. It doesn't change for what feels like the whole game. Neither side initiates a capture for a great period of time. And why is that the case? Well, neither side feels that it would be benefiting them. So that e5 pawn and the d4 pawn stay put. Following up, we have a5. That guy's poison. Taking with the bishop would be met with white scaring away the knight and then picking up the bishop. And taking with the knight is not good because of a chain reaction of captures. Chop, chop, trade of queens. No longer can black castle, and that's really going to hurt soon. So, black of course knows this. Bishop a7, h3, h3 and h6 are typical in this opening. By the way, this pawn cannot be picked up because of a fork with bishop to d5. So after bishop to e3, there are possibilities for white to maybe take and then take here, and the rook is simply there to now reinforce that bishop post. Rook to e1, h6. Black wants to play this, but doing so right away leaves f7 a little bit vulnerable, so that's a little bit irritating. So first h6, and only now rook to e8. g4. So this is the point I was talking about, the first 15 moves. Both players started the game with 100 minutes. You gain 30 seconds when you make a move, and they have more time than they started with at this point in the game. Until this point. This right here is the first think of the game. Carlsen spends some time here and chooses queen to e7. This is a very committal move for sure. The most committal move. Many weaknesses on the king side. What's the idea connected with this? Well, the knight wants to have this type of idea in mind. We're not quite there just yet, but okay. Queen e7, knight f1, and knight to d8. Where is this knight headed? Well, now that these squares are weakened, this is a possibility, but it's not so easily realized, because if the knight ever steps foot on the e6 square, white can chop away on e5. So there is an additional idea behind knight to d8. Can you spot it? What's the additional idea? I'm just going to move forward. What is it? Let's see. Knight g3. The next move is going to reveal what this idea is. c5. That knight was getting in the c-pawn's way. He's now contributing to the fight in the center. More pressure on d4. Does not budge. Queen to d2. c4, grabbing some queenside space. Bishop c2. And a little bit of a reorganization. I was pointing out that this isn't so easy to try to get in and key in on the, let's say, the f4 square because of the pressure white has on e5, but maybe there is an idea for this knight to circle into g6 and eye up the f4 square like so. Continuing, b4, and we have now a capture. This is a big moment in the game. b4, grabbing some space. This is one of these now or never moments. If you want to capture on b4, of course, Carlsen goes for it, taking on b3. It's not the only option. You could consider queen to f6, putting more pressure on the d4 point and playing within this structure. But black has a different idea in mind, capturing on b3. a5 is something black is thinking about by capturing on b3 right now. This capture, a5 is a little bit vulnerable. Bishop takes, and now we have bishop to e6. This is where there's an issue with white's reply. The game move is bishop to c2, and there is some advantage for white in this position, related to having some space on the queen side, but more so the pawn presence in the center. d4, e4 structure versus d6 and e5. White is for choice when you compare the structures in the center. The move to really look into is knight to f5, and of course I could say this with great confidence because I analyzed this with my great friend Stockfish8, and this is the recommendation by Stockfish, to leap into f5. Not quite sure, I can't put my finger on why exactly that move wasn't played. It certainly looks extra appealing, and I thought that was one of the ideas behind playing g4 to support this knight jump into f5. I'd like to take a look at the move knight to f5. Again, the game move was bishop to c2, but this is an important moment in the game. 21 moves in, and yeah, this game wraps up by move 35. Knight to f5. Do you tolerate the knight? I mean, does black try to work around this guy? It appears like you have to get rid of him. And now we have a great shift, both structurally and minor piece-wise. This bishop on b3, he is a knife. And what is really close, right around the corner, what we're going to observe is a king h2, rook to g1. And there sure seems to be a whole lot of white pieces pointing at the black position. I don't know, that my initial impression of this is it's really scary. You know, I'm not quite sure what this knight would be doing. What's his place, especially now that the pawn is taking out e6? There's a lot of traffic, let's just say, a lot of just drawing some lines towards the black king side. It looks very scary. I would not be surprised if we, at the top level, I would not be surprised if this position right here is not seen again. I don't think black would enter this position again because the players are certainly going to do their homework on this position and see knight to f5, you know what? That's getting extra scary. When you have three white pieces converging on h6 as well, and potential open g-file. Okay. That wasn't played. No knight f5, bishop c2 in the game, so retreating instead of leaping in there. Continuing, rook to c8. Very logical. That's a half-open file. And here we go. Fianchettoed knight. Pressure on a5. The queen is ready to now drop back to d8 in the event of knight to f5. This wasn't an option before when the knight was on f5. So rook to c1. Again, if he goes here, the queen goes home, and Maybe black picks up a pawn and then looks at these two squares. Rook c1 in the game. Queen to d8. Queen to b2. There's no good way to defend the a5 pawn. This is, again, one of the ideas I imagine black had by making that capture on b3, sensing that the a5 pawn could be a target later on, and it is. And in the game, it is picked up. Knight to d2, backing up, and this is where Carlsen now presses in the center with d5. These are moves that I like to make these kind of moves in a game. What do I mean by that? Well, you find your opponent, they back up a step, and then you just kind of lash out in the center and say, you know what, let's crack things open. You backed up, I'm moving forward. That kind of mentality. And it's super volatile in the center. This tension is still present, but okay, things are going to change very soon at this point. Rook to e1. Yeah, you can't capture like this at this point. Rook to e1, you can't take like this because that's gonna hurt really, really bad. King is already super weak, and if this f pawn is now on e3, that's going to be trouble. So rook to e1, maybe now. This is an idea. Bishop to b8, simply reinforcing the points. Black is prepared to meet each of these captures with a recapture, improving the quality of one of the pieces with that recapture. E takes d, bishop takes, bishop to f5, and the rook is able to react and move forward. Rook to c6, defending a6, so now the knight is able to move forward. Well, not to b3, but c4 is certainly a possibility, and who knows, maybe some rook swing. It's a very convenient reply. Sometimes your opponent throws a strike at you, and you have to react in a way that's strictly defensive. So this is not an inconvenience, stepping up like this a couple ranks. There's a purpose now. Continuing, queen to a3, and it's worth noting, okay, this is move 30, 5 moves out from game over. I think there's this is an interesting moment time-wise. I don't have an exact time for each player, but Caruana just has a few minutes, let's say 5 minutes, ballpark, remaining, and Carlsen has around a half hour. The game move here is knight to b7, and this initially struck me as a little bit odd because I thought, well, why not jump into c4? The computer kind of evaluates both of these moves here as equalish, and I could see why you may want to play knight to b7 instead of knight to c4. Knight to c4, it gives white an easy reply. You basically just have to take that knight out, and the position becomes a little bit more simplified. One less piece off. I can't say with certainty this is the reason behind knight to b7 and wanting to, let's say, keep more pieces on the board because you have more time and could assess the complications a little bit better, but maybe that is a train of thought that black had at this point. Continuing, knight b7, rook a to d1, e takes d, bishop takes, and here we go. Knight to g5. He wasn't doing anything on h7, but when he jumps in, he's jumping in with great effect. Many squares eyed up. h3 is weak. f3 square. And yeah, there's an issue on f3, as we will soon see. c4 is tried, allowing the queen to watch over f3, but we have one rook off. Bishop to e6, welcoming some exchanges. Black is up a pawn. Queen to e3 is a game-losing move. It was already extremely difficult for white, losing even before this last move, but there is one final move by Carlsen here that makes white resign. So a quick pop quiz to you. What move did Carlsen play that made Caruana cry? Okay. The last move of the game, bishop to f4. And with this, Caruana resigns, because queen takes bishop would be met with a fork. That hurts. And suppose you do something else, well, we take the knight. We win a piece. And if you take back, another fork would be present. That tricky knight. So that's the final move of the game, and if you're curious about the quality of play of these two players, let me pull up the graph so you could see this these average centi-pawn loss that the players had. Just quickly going through, white advantage until what point? Right here, bishop e6, and that's why I wanted to pay some attention to this moment right here, bishop to c2. That's where this advantage that white had was thrown away, and it's one of those give him an inch and he takes a yard, and it went downhill very, very fast from there. Team white, Caruana, 4 inaccuracies, 0 mistakes, 1 blunder, average centi-pawn loss of 34. The lower the number, the better. Team black, 1, 0, 0, 14 for an average centi-pawn loss. So that's the tail of the tape with this one. And feel free, as usual, to leave any feedback in the comment section below. And I'll catch you in the next video. That's all for now. Take care. Bye.